You are listening to AVFC EXTRA, a no-nonsense look at the club we all love. Brought to you by the Claret and Blue podcast. Hello, welcome back to the Claret and Blue podcast and the return of AVFC EXTRA. I'm your host, Dan Rowanson, stepping into the shoes of James Rushton, who's left us for pastures new. Good luck, James. I'm joined today by Neil Dunworth from the For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast. I knew that'd be a mouthful. Neil, you okay?
I'm very good. I'm great. After this news, it's really put me in chipper form after yesterday's results. So yeah, I'm back up in the horse again, and Aston Villa are going to win the league in 2023. It's just written the start.
Obviously, we're here to talk about Boubacar Kamara joining Villa, but you've just mentioned Man City, so let's quickly get your take on that as well before we move on. Have you recovered from that yet? Because I wrote a newsletter today for our Claret and Blue audience, and I believed at 2-0 that we might get something from us. Silly, really, to believe, but I thought, you know what, we might just get something here. So I've not quite recovered from the madness of the last kind of 24 hours, and now that we've signed a player as well, my head is all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of where I am at the moment. Yesterday, it was a tough 45, maybe 50 minutes after the game, and then I was just sitting down. I was actually watching a rerun of the F1, and I kind of thought to myself, wait a minute, we weren't supposed to win this game, and then I kind of went, I'm just going to forget all about the hopes and dreams I had at 68 and 69 minutes of that game, and I'm going to go back to how I felt just before kickoff and said, if we play okay, I think I'll be fine. And we did. We played okay for 70 minutes, but I think today's signing is, and I would imagine here from what we've heard from Steven Gerrard, is we're going to see some action early. We're going to Australia as well. Don't forget that. So we're going to see some action early with people coming in. And I think that would be a direct reflection on some of the areas we saw yesterday with regards to, he said, a weak spine himself. I would imagine straight up the middle is where we're going to be signing players. And today just goes to show that Aston Villa really mean business, considering the caliber of player that they brought in, that we can hopefully hold on to a lead, or hold on to a 2-0 lead, which sounds mad and all to say, with only 12 minutes to go. That would be nice.
And for those of you that are new to the channel, AVFC Extra is our kind of extra dose of Claret and Blue, which allows us to dive deeper into one subject with a special guest. Today's subject is obviously Boubacar Kamara joining Aston Villa, and today's guest is Neil, as you've seen so far. I'm stepping in for James, and James will have a massive list of questions for these kind of episodes. It happened this morning. I was still working on the Man City stuff from last night, so I've not prepared any questions, but I've got a rough kind of guide of where I want to take this. For those that are watching along live on Facebook, if you want to put a question to Neil, sorry about that notification, you can put a question in the comments box below. I'll put it to Neil because he's the expert in this situation. I'm going to play my role of stupid football fan, which I'll do quite comfortably. I know that you've waxed lyrical about Kamara on social media. I just started watching a video that you did back in January when we were linked with him originally for £15 million or euros. I can't remember which. And even that, to be fair, a £15 million signing would have been a pretty good deal. So to get him now 6 months out on a free contract before the transfer window has even opened, very, very good business by Villa, isn't it? That?
Absolutely. If somebody was to come from the future, go back 12 months ago, and someone was to come from the future and say, you guys are going to be sitting, okay, you're going to have been 2-0 up against Man City and have had a say in the title race. Okay, you weren't going to win it yourselves, but Coutinho is going to score a goal for Villa. Oh, and by the way, he signed for you for 17 million. And then the day after, you signed Boubacar Kamara, one of the best up-and-coming midfielders, whether it's arguable as to whether he's a direct 6 or a direct 8, and we'll get on to that in a moment. It's if someone was to come and say that you got both of those players for 17 million and the transfer window hasn't really even opened, then I would say go away, go back to where you came from. You're obviously a troll, but it's fantastic business, as you said yourself. It's not something that, even though I spoke about it in January with regards to the 15 million, and I thought, listen, pay 15 million, pay 20 if you have to, even though he's got 6 months on his contract. The upside, the high ceiling on this guy, he's thought of in the same vein as the likes of Camavinga and Aurelien Tchouameni, or however you pronounce his name, from Monaco. These guys are the new breed of French midfielders they're a new breed of do-it-all French midfielders, I suppose, really. And Kamara is thought as highly, is spoken of in the same corridors as those guys. So for me, that's an indictment in itself. We saw how Camavinga came on for Real Madrid and absolutely ran the show at 19 years of age. And we see all the hullabaloo about Aurelien, whose name I can't pronounce, from Monaco, whether he's going to go to Real Madrid or Liverpool. Really highly thought of guy as well. And Kamara is in that bucket as well. And I'm going to be really honest and I'm going to say, how did we pull this off? Because Gerrard and Johan Lange and Purslow must have really gone out there and laid out multiple red carpets for this guy when they went out to Marseille on that scouting, on that what now looks like that signing trip that they did maybe 2 weeks ago. Because this is a coup, and this is one that as you said, the likes of Philippe Auclair, Andy Brazil, a lot of people who are in the know with French football have stood up at this and taken notice and said, wow, this will take some beating for signing of the season so far.
Yeah. Like I said, before I'm going to go a little bit all over the place here, you just said, how has this happened? How much of this is down to Steven Gerrard and his pulling factor to have signed? I mean, he's had a pretty good window so far. If you go back to January as well, Luca Dean, obviously Premier League, highly rated, Coutinho, and then Kamara then today. This kind of even profile of signing, Ash was saying yesterday, doesn't even happen under Dean Smith, never mind whether we could get it over the line, because we weren't looking in these markets then. So how much of it is down to Gerrard that he's got it over the line?
Well, I think, and I've fallen into this as well before. I've always directly compared the two, Dean Smith and Gerrard, with regards to what is quote unquote pulling power. But I think it's just natural that if you're sitting inside in a meeting, regardless of who it is, but if you're sitting inside and if the person to put the discussion over the line is arguably one of the best midfielders, best all-round midfielders in Europe over the last 20 years, Steven Gerrard, I'm saying that is. I don't know how good Johan Lange was or if Purslow ever kicked football or whatever, but Steve, I think that there is a factor of magnitude with regards to that. Now, saying that as well, like Kamara isn't coming here just because he wants to get Steven Gerrard's autograph. He's coming here because he buys into the project. He buys into what we've got, what we've sold him, with regards to where we want to be and what we want to do. And ideally, finishing 14th in the league, a lot of people said, England's 14th best football team. And look, the league doesn't lie at the end of the season. But when Steven Gerrard came in and what he wants to do now, what the club want to do, the outlay that the club maybe have to spend, maybe there's been other names that have been mentioned to Boubacar Kamara that we're in contact with, or that we just have a little bit of a piece to go over the line. Remember, I said at the start, I'm expecting a bit of a flurry. I'm expecting some good business to be done over the next 3 weeks or maybe 4 weeks before we go to Australia. So it's not going to be one of these ones where we're going to be massively active on deadline day and signing 3, 4, 5 players. I don't think it's like that. And when you're signing free transfers like this, you need to be able to sell the project really early and really quickly. And I wouldn't be surprised if this isn't our last free transfer. If this isn't our last free transfer as well, because I think Gerrard said, we're working on a lot of things in the background at the moment, and that will become apparent soon. And I'm paraphrasing on that. So it's really interesting, but obviously he does have an effect on the pulling power of the club, because he's a massive name. He's a huge name in the game of football, and he can talk football to footballers. So can Dean Smith, don't get me wrong, but it's just that added bit of magnitude I think that the manager would have, and the fact that he's so new. He's only been in here since October last year. He can always fall back on, listen, this is what we've implemented from the last regime. This is what we've done. This is what we're trying to do. And this is where we see you fitting into our plan next year with these extra players. So sometimes the small sample set for somebody like Steven Gerrard can help, because he can say, we haven't been able to implement what I really want to do yet, and this is where I think you're going to fit in. So I think that's an overall positive. And if we see quality signings like this come in through the course of the rest of the off season or over the next few weeks, well, then that's going to be amazing, I think.
Yeah, you would imagine Tarkowski might be next to the door as a free transfer as well. He's obviously been linked in various different places, which would be a decent signing in itself, I think. But we'll get onto that later down the line if and when it does happen. On Kamara, like obviously, kind of selling in this project, Villa's potential isn't the 14th best side in the Premier League. It wants to be top 8 as a minimum, really. And we spoke yesterday after Manchester City. I think we're 15 points off European places, and some of the games we've thrown away yesterday. I know it's Man City, but you're still ahead. We've lost to Wolves twice. One of those we're ahead. We've lost to Watford twice. We dropped points to Brentford, I think, Newcastle's, a couple of others where you think, we probably should have won those. So you can kind of see how we're not a million miles away. However, I don't want to kind of get onto the negative side of it, because that's not really the point of this. But if it doesn't work out for Kamara in terms of a football business perspective, his value is going to go up in the future. He's 22 now. We paid nothing for him besides wages and sign-on fees and all that kind of thing. But a year, 2, 3, 4 in the Premier League is only a good business decision as well. Just that side of it is a good kind of a thing that like a well-run football club does. Kind of thinks ahead a little bit to what might not work out. Can we still make some money off it?
I absolutely 100% agree. I 100% agree. And the further up the league we go, like, obviously there is potential that, obviously we go down and we leave the league like we did when we had some good French stars, like the likes of Johan, what was his name? It was Johan
Veretout.
And Idrissa Gueye. Like, look what they've gone on to be now. That isn't a failing on Aston Villa's part. That's a failing on, I suppose, the overall team where we were, who we had in over the team and getting relegated. So yes, it is a failing on Aston Villa's part, but they were good players brought in at the wrong time for the wrong people that were over them. And I think that's fair to say in hindsight now. But the club seems an awful lot more together. It seems an awful lot more coherent. The top is working with the bottom, and the middle knows what it's doing in between those two as well. So it's a full proper sandwich of collaboration at the minute. And when we talk about the likes of the future proofing, I suppose, of signings, the future proofing of the club itself, you can't get much better than signing a 22-year-old, just gone 23-year-old, 22-year-old, he hasn't gone 23 yet, 22-year-old with massive upside. Like, Transfer Market have him as valued at 22.5 million. As of now, he's just gotten the French national squad. Lump another 5 million on if he gets a game for France over the next couple of weeks and months. Maybe he goes to Qatar. Lump another 10 million on. Maybe Villa are finish in the top 8 in the Premier League. The way the transfer fees are going, they're only going one way, and that's up. And for a guy with this amount of potential, as I say, that's good for Aston Villa, and it future-proofs the club. And when we get him for free, yes, we're going to have front-loaded it with lots of wages. Like, we're not sitting here and oblivious to that. This kid is a rich boy after signing that contract today. That is a fact. His family don't got to worry about money for generations to come. But I think it's worth it sometimes as well when you do something like that, because obviously the free transfer is the free transfer, and front loading the contract with lots of wages is beneficial itself. Because look, I suppose the only way we would probably keep him for more than 4 or 5 years of whatever he signed, and being realistically and honest, is if we can fulfill our potential. If we don't fulfill our potential, we would need to sell him. And if we sell him, we get a transfer fee plus the amortization of the contract as well. So from a financial point of view, it makes an awful lot of sense to front load those wages too.
Yeah. That's enough of selling the player after we've only just bought him. Let's move on to what he brings to Aston Villa. It's a side of the deal you have to talk about. We've done it, so let's move on. There's a few comments in the Facebook feed saying that they've never heard of him until we were even linked with him, which is a fair thing to say for some football fans. Not everyone will be across the French football leagues to be watching a 22-year-old. I've not been watching him. I've seen a highlights reel, and I think looks like the next best thing, which everyone looks good on a highlights reel on YouTube, so that's a little bit dangerous. We talk a lot about potential. So kind of from your side of things, I know you put a lot of research into this guy for your own podcast, which we mentioned at the start. Are we buying potential? Or are we buying someone ready-made who's going to make a difference for Aston Villa come match day 1 next season?
That's actually a great question, because
bit of both, actually, probably.
We're obviously buying potential because he's 22 years of age, and there's very few midfielders that are culturally and I suppose positionally fully formed at 22 years of age. There's very, very, very few, in fact. I'm going to come out and I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it early doors. If you're wondering what kind of a midfielder this guy is, I get an absolute bang of Declan Rice off him. That type of midfielder. Don't hit the comments and say, oh my God, are we have to say? No, don't. I'm talking about that type of midfielder. The midfielder that can skirt between an 8 and a 6 very easily. A midfielder that's used to playing more in defence. Declan Rice did play some of his, as far as I'm aware anyway, I think even for Ireland, he played some of his youth performances and stuff like that came in the back line as a centre half. Because Declan Rice used to play for Ireland before, with some crazy world. But Kamara is kind of like that. He has played 18 games for Marseille as a centre half. and he was quickly fast tracked and moved into a kind of a hybrid defensive midfielder kind of role. And the reason that I'm differentiating between the two is because he's come up under Andre Villas-Boas as well, who would have definitely would have been synonymous with having a definitive one behind the four in midfield, if that makes sense. So he would have played a 4-1-4-1 essentially when he was playing it, and Kamara was that guy that sat him behind the four in midfield. It probably wasn't the best use of his talents as time has gone on, and now that Sampaoli is in there with the team, you can see it's become an awful lot more fluid, and I think that's really interesting from the point of view of where Aston Villa want to go. I think I would have been banging the table, kicking down doors, jumping out windows, looking for a big, massive, strong central defensive midfielder, even up until about 3 weeks ago. And I've kind of thought to myself, I went, oh, wait a minute, there's enough data here to kind of look at it and think Gerrard mightn't want this big, massive midfielder, because when you look back, a lot of the times our midfield is pretty flat. Yes, we do have an inflection backwards to have a kind of hybrid six-ish player there, and you see that with Douglas Luiz. It's obviously more pronounced when Nakamba comes into the team, but this guy can fill the gaps, I think, in that area, because that's what he's played for Marseille at the moment. He has, he can sit in front of that back three, although I wouldn't like when you look at him or when you watch him play, because he's 22 and he doesn't like to be caught in those half spaces isolated. So to have somebody like McGinn beside him, and maybe to have somebody like a Jacob Ramsey there who do an awful lot of work and cover those half spaces, because they've been doing that all year to cover over for Digne and Matty Cash. I think he could thrive in that area. The fact that it would allow him to go forward, because his real asset for this guy, especially over this year, has become a pivot player in the fact he maneuvers his body when he receives passes. It's really, really good. He very rarely receives the ball static with his back facing the player when they're coming onto him. He's always on the turn, on the move when he receives it, kind of like McGinn in a way that he does that. And he's been pretty good. So some of the statistics, I've just got them written down here so that I don't forget them, but passes under pressure. He's had quite a lot of passes under pressure this season, and he's up in the top 90 percentile, I think, of those. Actually, I'm looking for it here, and I can't find where I have it. He's 12 passes under pressure per 90 minutes. So what I'm getting at here is Sampaoli just has changed him into this player that's like, you be the focal point of our initial attack and our initial ball progression. You be that guy that picks it up as the pivot. If people, and the reason I'm putting you in there is because if people converge upon you, you are good enough at getting out of that. So 12.04 passes under pressure. And if you were to equate that to people we have in the team already, then, Douglas Luiz receives 5.7 passes under pressure per game, or has done it per 90 minutes over the last 365 days. And Marvelous Nakamba receives 5.25. So when we're talking, we can give this guy a heavy load of work. Heavy workload. He's done it. He's had those, that's 12 successful passes under pressure this season. So that's really good. And when you look at his pass completion rates, 91% pass completion rate. And that's not just saying that he passes at 3 or 4 yards every time. He's a 95% completion rate in the short areas, and a 93.5% completion rate in the medium areas. And I think, I don't have it written down here, but I think it's a 77% completion rate in long range passing as well. And when you compare his overall completion to the likes of Marvelous Nakamba and Douglas Luiz, you're looking at both of those come somewhere in between the 83 and 85% overall pass completion rate as well. So Steven Gerrard came in here. He said he wants to keep possession. This guy is good for a possession-based team, for a team that wants to play it out from the back, but maybe doesn't want their defenders to be doing an awful lot of the playing of the ball, because we've seen our defenders maybe go along with it an awful lot. Tyrone Mings has. You mentioned James Tarkowski. If he is somebody Aston Villa want to sign, this will give him a good comfort blanket. The ball goes to somebody like Kamara, and Kamara can deal with it and progress the ball forward up the field there as well. So I think for me, that's one of his massive strengths, is the fact that he has the background of defending, being a centre back. He's played under two managers who've played him in two slightly different positions, and he's only 22. One being the rigid holding midfielder that Villas-Boas has played him, and the other one being more that pivot player, that dynamic, that fluid player that Sampaoli has brought in, that Argentinian style, deep lying, holding player, yes, but also he's been given that kind of that license to start attacks and to maybe be a bit more forward thinking in his passing.
Does kind of the phrase defensive midfielder not give him enough credit then? Because from what you're talking about there, it doesn't sound like this big bruiser of a midfielder that's just going to sit there and break things up and move on and that's it, almost like a very good Nakamba. It sounds a bit more like he's going to want to get on the ball and make things happen as well. Is that what Villa need though?
I actually, the more and more I think about it, is that like we can cry out for essential defensive midfielder all we want, but if Steven Gerrard doesn't want to play a dedicated bruiser as you like in there, the likes of and I'm showing my age here now, Papa Bouba Diop from back in the day for Fulham, the wardrobe or the refrigerator. Which one was he? Was he the wardrobe? I think they called him. God rest him. Actually, I think he's since passed. But like he was a big guy who stopped people playing, or even like an N'Golo Kante who's there to just be a nuisance and to pressure and to intercept. The interesting thing about Kamara is he does have an awful lot of pressures and he does have an awful lot of interceptions. He's kind of like he's not going to jump into a tackle. So if you're expecting this guy to be guts and glory, to have that massive tackle that's going to get you up off your seat 2 or 3 times a game and to be almost a throwback type player, this ain't the guy. This guy's measured. When he goes into a tackle, he measures it. He makes sure that he's going to slow down opposition more so than stop them dead in their tracks, if that makes sense. So he'll slow down opposition. He's got a high pressure success rate, 39.1%. I think it is, puts him in the top 95%, if I'm not mistaken, in the top leagues in Europe as well. And when you compare that with Douglas Luiz, the pressure success rate with Douglas Luiz was 29.8%. And the reason I bring that up is they had similar amount of pressures per 90 minutes over the course of last season. Now, Marvelous Nakamba comes in at 29.6%, but he would have had over 20 pressures per 90 minutes, whereas the other two guys would have come in between 15 and 17 per game. So there would have been a smaller sample set there. So his tackling skill is good, but like he's not going to be the type of guy that's going to dive and put a fella out over the advertising hoardings, So if that's what you're expecting, that's not what you're going to get. And that's why I'm kind of talking from the point of view of it's like I'm not comfortable at the moment just pigeonholing him as this is a definite 6, because number one, I don't think this team is going to play with an absolute rigid 6 next season. This guy can play it. He has under Andre Villas-Boas, but he's come really into his own since Sampaoli has taken over the team as well. And Sampaoli has allowed him playing, I want to call it a 7 position, but obviously he's not going to play out in the wing, if you know what I mean, kind of in between the two. So that's why I liken him to Declan Rice, Stan, because, Declan Rice gets pigeonholed as this definitive 6, but how many times do you see Declan Rice pass the ball forward or up in the box, or how many times have you seen him do the business for England there, striding out through midfield? And while I'm not saying that this guy is going to hop on the field and be exactly like Declan Rice day one, it's that type of player, I think, is what we envisage this guy can be.
Yeah, that's a more sensible comparison, maybe, because I think the caption on this Facebook post is like, a proper defensive midfielder at last. Lewis Sprigg here says we were dying out for a CDM for years. Is it kind of a little bit short-sighted to just suggest that he will be a number 6 that will sit in front of the back four and do nothing else, and he will want to get on the ball, get further forward, not to the extent of being a box-to-box midfielder, so to speak, but has that technical ability to actually do things when he has got the ball. So we've talked in recent weeks about someone like Nakamba. He's very good at the breaking up the play bit and the big slide tackle and things like that, and comes on. He didn't shore things up yesterday, but comes on and he's supposed to do that role, but then he wins it back and gives it away straight away because he doesn't have the technical ability to pass it off and move it well, whereas Kamara, it sounds like he will be able to progress the ball forward once he wins it back.
One of the big things, and everybody says this about Kamara, is Kamara's like a guy doing his driving test. Well, sorry, they don't say this. This is my analogy. He's like a guy doing his driving test. So when you're doing the driving test, you're always looking in your mirrors. You're looking around, making sure, you do that over-exaggerated, looking around to make sure if there's no traffic coming at a roundabout or whatever, just to pass your driving test. This guy does it in the field. You should see him. His head is on a swivel. He's looking around all the time. And I mentioned it with his body positioning when he receives passes into him. He's got a 95.8% pass reception rate. So that means if he gets the ball, he's not going, like, he doesn't lose it that often. and which is really important, I think. But he's always looking around. He scans the field, and I know this is very intangible, and it's very easy to say it, but he's consistently looking around. So when you look at that type of player, and when you bring, like, if I was to, I'll speak English. If going back to the question that you asked, if we were to pigeonhole him directly as a 6, I just think you're underutilizing one of his massive strengths, which is to get his head turned, look around and pick out a pass, whether it be 5-10, a 10-yard pass or whatever. If you're just like, if he's get the ball, get rid of the ball, like Nakamba really is, that's not utilizing him in the right way. He may turn out to be a very, very good 6 in time, but I think at the moment he's showing his worth to the team in two areas, which is pressure success, as in, like, he doesn't just dive into a tackle for the sake of it. When he tackles, he means it, and he usually is calculated with regards to that. But also when he wins back the ball, he's quite good at using it as well. And as I said, his workload has dictated the fact that Marseille have given him a lot of the ball. I think it's something like 71.9 times about 72 times, I think, per game he's actually targeted with a pass, and of those 95.8% of those have been successful, as in he's took the pass, he's retained possession, and he's passed the ball on again. So to just utilize him as a breaker, as a blocker, as a destroyer would be completely neglecting to utilize another one of the brilliant skills that he has with regards to his retention and his ball progression as well.
That's interesting. There's 2 comments here, or 2 questions rather, from Liam and Edward that I want to kind of mould into one, really. So Liam says, do we think this signing kills a Calvin Phillips deal? And Edward says, who is he replacing? So I'm kind of going to mould those 2 questions together and want you to kind of assess what Villa's midfield looks like next season now Kamara's in there. And some of that maybe does rely on, is Louise staying around? Will Sanson still be there? What happens to John McGinn's position? Will he now play further forward? Do we sign somebody else like a Calvin Phillips, and you've got Phillips and Kamara as a 2 potentially, with Ramsey further forward maybe? So I'm going to give you the floor to talk about formation, midfield options, future signings, and roll all that into one for me as best you can.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, because we're going to have to balance the books somewhere. We're going to have to sell players this offseason. Now, obviously, there's going to be players like, Target's going to be gone. I think Courtney House is going to be gone. Anwar, Trez, they're all going to be gone. Potentially Bertrand Traore, I would imagine, might be gone as well, or somebody of that ilk. And I don't like writing anybody's epitaph at the moment. Sanson, you mentioned, would be another one. So I think that we will see those outgoings, and I think those outgoings have pretty much been ascertained that some of those guys are going to be gone, just based on their usage, based on who's been sent out on loan and all that jazz so far. Who he replaces is an interesting one, because straight away it's just like he replaces Douglas Luiz. Definitely replaces Douglas Luiz, and probably that's who he will replace in this midfield. Now, does that mean we're selling Douglas Luiz? I don't know, and I would say not, because let's not forget that when Douglas Luiz came into this team, he was Boubacar Kamara at 22 years of age, and but now obviously I don't think he was as talented, and he certainly wasn't a 6 when he came in. He adapted to the 6 role more. He might have been a 6 when he played in Spain for that year, but a Spanish 6 sometimes is tasked with passing the ball more and less putting your foot in the ball and having to stop big breakaways. So when he came in, he's done the job and he's had to learn. And there's been a lot of learning and there's been a lot of growth. We forget Douglas Luiz is only 24 going on 25. So there's a lot of inherent upside in holding on to Douglas Luiz here as well. I don't think he's somebody that's going to be sold this summer. I think we actually probably see him sign a new deal. As we've seen with this club, players sign deals to protect their value. Once again, we talk about future-proofing the squad and future-proofing the business of Aston Villa. I think the club are, like we did with Courtney House. Courtney House only signed a new deal, I think, in December, and we probably won't see him again. He's probably going to be sold, but that future-proofs his price from the point of view of his contract, and maybe they've lumped an extra 10 grand on for a couple of weeks or whatever. So Douglas Luiz, I think, stays. I don't think we will see massive overhaul in the midfield from the point of view of players going out, because I think you need options, and I think sometimes that's where we've fallen down. We got really lucky with Jacob Ramsey coming through and growing and developing as best as he did this season. And I mean, really lucky because his goals from midfield have changed games. His performances from midfield, the fact he's somehow over the course of this season, it looks like he's packed on about 5 pounds of muscle, and he's become a real player who can carry the ball. If we can get that from Carney Chukwuemeka next year, absolutely brilliant. I think he needs to sit down with Ollie Stevenson and eat whatever Jacob Ramsey's been eating for the last 12 months.
I think Carney's a big lad, to be fair.
Well, he is, but could you imagine if he had that? It's the power of run that and the kind of the athletic strength, I suppose, really that Jacob Ramsey has shown. I'm kind of skirting around the question that you asked because I kind of half forgot about it in the middle of my train of thought. But I think obviously Sanson is going to be gone. I think young Tim gets a championship move next season. I think a lot of teams like him. Villa really like him. And when we talk about progression planning and so on like that, Tim is only 19 years of age. Boubacar Kamara is only 22 years of age. We do have players, as I say, maybe Douglas Luiz isn't here in 2 years' time. Maybe John McGinn, who's 27, 28. Maybe as he starts to hit 30, his motor starts to decrease. So the progression planning, if young Tim is loaned out next season, which I think he will be, I think that's beneficial. If Carney signs a new deal, maybe he's loaned out next season and play big boy football, for a longer period of time. So there will be gaps in this midfield we will need to close in. And I don't think Boubacar Kamara is going to be the final piece in the puzzle for who we actually bring in. I think we could bring in an older player. I think we could bring in a more. I still don't think Jeffrey Kondogbia is dead in the water yet. Somebody along those lines, and I think we could bring in an older head because Steven Gerrard said he wants to solidify that spine. He wants to bring in players who are ready to play right now. That's what he said, ready to play right now. So for me, if Kondogbia could be got at a knockdown deal, I think he comes in and he is more of your definitive, solid number 6 type player. But so I don't think that he's necessarily going to replace anybody in the squad, as in we're going to have to sell someone to make way for him. But I think just natural attrition from players going out on loan and maybe Sanson being sold, I think that's probably more where it's going to come from, because I think this offseason is going to be addition, and then the subtraction will come from the players who maybe there isn't a future for. But I do think there is a future for Douglas Luiz within the club, within the team, and I think that they just need rotational players to come in and out of that midfield next season.
Is a more likely 3 midfield Kamara, Ramsey and Luiz plays the 8 role. He goes a bit further forward. Is that something we might see? But then Gerrard fancies McGinn, doesn't he? So
yeah. But isn't it like that? I think that's been our problem, specifically going back since we've joined the Premier League, is that we have a starting 13 players. And that's really it. Like at times this season we were bringing Ashley Young on in central midfield, like. All greatest respect to what he's achieved and what he's done. And anyone who watches my podcast, sometimes I get itchy when I see him come on the field because he's 37 years of age. I'm 37. No, I'm a Wayne Rooney, 37 years of age, not like an Ashley Young. But at the same time, Father Time is undefeated.
No hope for you yet.
Yeah, there is still hope for me yet. I've seen Rooney putting him in the back of the net, training for Derby. But there is... it's like Father Time is undefeated from that point of view. So I would prefer not to have him coming on in central midfield, and maybe to bring on the likes of Luiz to add as an 8th position to try and solidify that. Bring Nakamba on for Kamara maybe, and then go to a 6 as opposed to that hybrid 6-8 position, that flat midfield. Maybe bring on Nakamba to be a bit more defensive. So it's like we saw yesterday. It didn't really work when we brought on Nakamba for somebody who's so attacking as Coutinho, and we had to completely change our midfield roundup. And that was kind of an issue. We needed to get Nakamba, or we needed to get maybe some defensive legs, and it just fell flat. It ended up in hindsight being a complete another catastrophe. Whereas if we're making one substitution for one player, one change for one substitution, should I say, within the tactical setup, I think that's what Gerrard wants, because when he brings a player on, sometimes he's to move 3 or 4 people around, change their positioning, change the how the whole fulcrum works within that midfield area. So I think it's positive. I think it's positive to have a team. 5 subs as well next year.
Yeah, true. Yeah. There's a few questions in the comments talking about like Luis Suarez and what we're going to do with our strikers and stuff. And I want this to kind of be the Kamara episode. We are doing our end of season review on Wednesday, which will probably be out Thursday or Friday. So I'll try and do as many questions in that as I can. I just want to go back to the midfielders. I was writing down then while you were talking all the options. I might have even missed somebody here. So we're expecting 3 midfield. to be next season's 4-3-3 effectively still the same. So I'm going to go through these. I want you to give me starter, squad, sell, or loan.
Okay.
John McGinn.
Starter.
Jacob Ramsey.
Starter.
Boubacar Kamara.
I'm going to say rotation.
Really? So he doesn't come in and start straight away?
Oh, well, he will come in and start straight away, but I don't think he's going to play like 36, 37 games. I think there will be times when he will be sat down during the course of the season. So, yeah, I'm going to say starter. Yeah, I'm going to say starter.
Okay, so that's your midfield three first up. Douglas Luiz.
Yeah, I think he's going to be rotation. Like, I think he's the guy who comes in for Kamara when Kamara is rested. Yeah.
Yeah. Sanson.
Sell.
Nakamba.
Rotation. /sell. I'm going to say /sell if Jeffrey Kondogbia comes in there or someone like he's upgradable. As much now as I love him.
Yeah, so if we sign another midfielder, Nakamba would probably be the next out the door, you think?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay. Irabunam and Carney, both.
I would have both of those loan. Yeah, I would have both of those loan them out.
I think one of them might stick around. But it depends whether Carney stays at all, I suppose. That was a bit of a strange segment, really, for podcast listeners. We just reading off a name and you saying one word back, but we tried it. There's a lot of positives about Kamara, obviously, and we said at the start when we were talking about selling him, I don't want to focus on the negatives too much, but we've beaten, supposedly, Manchester United, Atletico Madrid to the signature of Kamara. So there's a kind of niggling part in the back of my mind going, what's wrong with him then? Why didn't he go to a bigger club with Champions League or European football already? Is there some kind of missing downside that we've not thought of here?
Very, very good question. In January, it was mooted that just the bigger clubs weren't willing to pay a 22-year-old 100 grand a week. You know, he was on quite a whack at Marseille. These are all unconfirmed rumors. These are just things I've read. So I'm not going to say like I've any in-depth knowledge of it. But apparently, he's going to be on a good whack at Villa, put it that way. And he was on, like, there was rumors of anywhere from 38 to 45, I think is what he was currently on at Marseille. I'm completely open to correction on that. I'm only just saying what I've read. So maybe clubs weren't willing to give him that big bag of money just yet. At 22 years of age, considering that they probably had to allocate funds to other areas of their teams, like Manchester United specifically. I wouldn't like to be the accountant for United. There's going to be a lot of big numbers going out, a lot of big numbers coming in, you know, so he's going to have some sleepless nights thinking about all the bazillions that they're going to spend. But they're going to be interesting in the market. So it's one of these things, though, that I think his agent wanted a commensurate money package for him, and I think Villa were able to offer that. And it just happens that, like, you're going to have some people who are going to turn around and say, well, what are his motivational factors? Is he just a money man? We won't know. There's no way
stepping stone, maybe is another argument that he comes to Villa for a couple of years and then goes to an Arsenal or whatever in the Champions League.
Well, he's after leaving Marseille, who just got into the Champions League this season to join Aston Villa. You know, so that to me means that we've backed up the Brinks truck somewhere along the line. You know, and it's a fair thing, you know, to ask: is this, like, does he see us as a stepping stone? We will determine whether we are a stepping stone of a club for these players based on our performance. So that's a Steven Gerrard problem.
Yeah,
that's not an Aston Villa fan problem. We're like, none of us want to admit's the wrong word. None of us want to ever get into the thought process of, oh, well, we're only a stepping stone of a club, because we want our club to win the league, win the Champions League, mad and all as it sounds. That's what we want. That's why we follow them. But it's up to Steven Gerrard to make sure we're not a stepping stone for the likes of these guys, because our performances, our league finishing positions need to be commensurate of a team that can sign these players. So once again, it's about selling the dream and the passion to him. And look, if Kamara goes to Chelsea or goes to United, who knows where his career could go, because he might only play 20 games a season, 18 games a season. That's why when we said he comes to Aston Villa, I think he's going to play a good whack of games. But I do think that there will be times when we'll maybe take him out of the team, or we'll rotate that midfield tree a bit more to keep them fresh, so that we don't have teams overrunning us for a 5-minute period after 78 minutes in the future.
Yeah, hopefully that's the end of those kind of things. We've talked a lot of times about Villa being a bit soft, or, you know, having a bit of a soft underbelly and things like that. And it's these signings and being smart about things and getting the mentality right over the next 2 or 3 months that will hopefully, you know, put those kind of things to bed. I think the last kind of point I had was just about the smartness, which isn't a word, of Villa doing their business early. You kind of mentioned going to Australia for pre-season in 3, 4, 5 weeks. The transfer window isn't technically open yet, I don't think, till the start of June, when players' contracts start to expire. So to get Coutinho signed up on a permanent and then Kamara done today as well, it's like all the promo stuff Villa have done. There's no like official picture of him yet, so obviously it's not kind of officially over the line in terms of media work yet. But it's the signs of a well-run club, isn't it, to get your business done early? Like, we finished the season yesterday, and if pre-season started tomorrow on Tuesday, our squad is already stronger. Like, Villa have moved that quickly to get things done, and that's what you need. We need a good, consistent pre-season with all the players that are going to be there. I don't like these deadline days at all. I don't like deadline day signings unless it's a big deal that you can't miss out on.
You mean you don't have a Simon Dawkins jersey somewhere in that rack behind you then, no?
I've got my yellow tie in the wardrobe. I just don't like it. You are already a couple of games into the season and you sign a couple of players and expect them to just fit in and hit the ground running. I don't want that. I want Villa to be smart and ready, and from day one of pre-season to have, right, this is the structure of the side. We might add to it over the next couple of weeks, but certainly by season one, match day 1 of the new season, we've got our squad. This is what we're going with. We know what we want to do. We've got a good mentality. Let's start pushing, because if you want to get up into Europe, you need a good start. So it's important that Villa get this summer right now.
As you said, it's getting it done early. And here's me with my what's the word? My social experiment. My what's it? I don't know what the word is. I'm even trying to use, but my projection, kind of. The club is trying to project positivity. And now is the best time to do that. Get signings like Coutinho and Boubacar Kamara in now, before we start to play in August, because when we start to play in August, if we lose our first 4 games, there's players that are going to be going, whoa, no, I'm not going near this thing, because this is this hasn't started off just like we expected it to. There's positivity. You can use signed players to sell the project to other players. The benefits of getting people in early are immense. It's difficult. You have to overpay for it, absolutely, even though we underpaid for Coutinho based on the deal that we had. But I would imagine there's going to be an eye-watering amount of agent's bonus, signing on fee, contract details for Kamara. It's going to be eye-watering, and people are going to say,
football, though, isn't it?
It's going to be labelled on him at some stage over the next 5 years of his time at Villa. Is he worth 100x, whatever it is, a week? That's not my concern. I couldn't care less what they pay him. I just want him to perform in the field. But I think that, that is good. And that's why I think this, they've tried to get a cheaper deal at deadline day for people who are trying to maybe flog a player and he hasn't quite left. We're kind of shopping outside that basement at the moment. Now, I'm not going to call it a bargain basement, because the top clubs do it, and they do it to pressure teams into selling to them that may need to strengthen their squads, and the teams getting nervous. We're in a situation now whereby I think we will scour the free transfer market, or we have been doing it. We'll get those free transfer big names in early if we need to, and then we'll be able to use those to sell the project. But I think that there would be it would be a trickling of signings, or a trickling of potential incomings once we do go to Australia, because I can't imagine as Steven Gerrard, he's spoken for nearly 6 weeks in a row about looking forward to getting into a rhythm during the off season, having a full pre-season to implement his tactics and to implement his style of play. So I can't imagine him going to Australia halfway around the world with only a half-cooked squad, because I really I'm at the stage where I don't want that to be an excuse again next year, because we had a truncated off season this year, and with COVID, with matches being cancelled and stuff like that in our off season, and we need a good off season this year. Considering that we're going to have a massive break in the middle of the year with regards to the World Cup, and these guys are going to be gone, so the work needs to be put in early doors for me, and that's why we need to get our players in early.
Yeah, I'm not ruling out that Villa don't sign a player or two, after pre-season or when the season starts. But a key cog to what we're trying to do, I think all that will be done early doors, so we can kind of cement that system in place. People were kind of someone asked a question last week about the Grealish thing last season. Did that kind of disrupt our pre-season? And I think the club kind of knew he was going to go, but that kind of hangover, even from a fan perspective, of will he, won't he? He's there in pre-season, then he's not. that disjoint thing. Danny Ings appears out of nowhere the next day. It's all kind of just very random. Like, I don't want that this year. Like you said, I don't want that to be an excuse either. There's loads of questions coming in saying, like, who do we need next? What positions do we need? I do want to kind of leave that for another day, but as soon as you're a guest on the show, Neil, I'll end this episode with that. We're talking about a trickle of signings coming through. What else do we need? How many do you think we'll see? And how many do you think we'll see leave? If you had to look into your crystal ball.
Well, based on what's been levelled in the back page articles so far, I think we'll definitely be looking at more defensive reinforcements. I think another centre half, definitely one, if not two, I think will come in. I think maybe left back reinforcement. So we're talking two more defenders. Maybe one of the centre halves can perform in left back. Maybe there's a certain man at Rangers that wants to come back to Steven Gerrard. Gerrard signed him from the Leicester underage setup, put him directly into the Rangers squad and showed faith in him there. Maybe there's a bond there, who knows? Maybe that is Calvin Bassey that comes in and performs two of those roles. Maybe we do see somebody like, I don't know, I'm like Tarkowski's on a free. He was mentioned recently. I think there's another midfield addition to come in, another central midfield addition to come in. And then I'm just on the train whereby a wily old fox up front, and I know that people are going to read between the lines of what I'm saying there. I couldn't tell you who's going to sign for Aston Villa, but I just think in a way it makes sense to have somebody who can come in for 15 games over the course of the year and maybe get 6 goals, because we've got players at the moment that, Ollie Watkins and Danny Ings, they're flirting around the 10 goals a season mark, and I think we need somebody to supplement that, because we've got Archer coming through, and that's why I think it's going to be a wily old fox that comes in up top. But I think the striking department, I could be completely wrong in that, but I think the striking department is higher on their wish list than most people will give it credit for, because we do need to capitalize on some of the chances that we do make, and maybe a different type of striker as well. Maybe we're talking, like somebody mentioned Davis in the comments there. Maybe we do need that brute that goes up front and can hold up the ball. But I'm not prepared to comment on anything to do with the striker department, because I think it's vast and varied who we could go for in that area. I think it's a bit more predictable what we would look for in central midfield and in defence. But overall, I think we might be looking at, including Boubacar Kamara, I think we might be looking at 5 signings over the course of so 4 more to come in. I think will probably be a sound suggestion.
But after all that, for striker, you're talking about Watkins, Ings, Archer, and Suarez.
I can neither confirm nor deny whether I was mentioning. I just think, I think if you're bringing someone on for the last 10-15 minutes to run a team ragged, I think Suarez can still do that. And I think he put away one-on-ones, and I think he's a nuisance. I think he wins penalties. We've won. How many penalties did we win this season? Did we win 2?
2 or 3, maybe.
Yeah. Like, that's a big bugbear of mine. We don't have players that get into the box or attack the box. Like, one of my big bugbears with Matty Cash is we played against Burnley. How Matty Cash didn't run at Charlie Taylor every single time and try and win a penalty was beyond me. It's a tiny thing. Cash is superb. He's player of the season for us, without a shadow of a doubt. But winning penalties makes things easier. It gives you an advantage, and I think that's what we need to get cuter with and smarter with. I thought Leon Bailey would bring that, but we barely saw Leon Bailey this season. And I think over the course of the next year, I think that or if we're bringing somebody in, a bit of guile up front, I think will be thought of, because Ollie Watkins, some of what he does well is very good, but he's got some parts that he needs to work in his game. Like, 1-to-ones don't come naturally to him. I think that's fair to say. It's not a natural part of his game coming from playing as a wide player. And sometimes Danny Ings as well. Danny Ings is an instinctual striker. He's completely the opposite. He loves a snapshot, and his snapshots are nearly better than his performed shots, or if he's got lots of time. So he's completely the opposite type of player. So I think maybe bringing somebody in who's an instinctual striker that can do both would be good. But I haven't a clue who that name will be. Then if it ends up to be Suarez, well, then we'll have to see how it pans out in the wash.
A player I don't expect it to be is someone I totally forgot about from Jody here. He says Wesley. I mean, I don't think he'll be in and around the options, but Wesley, I mean, selling him, will we sell him, I guess, get a bit of money for him?
Well, he's barely played for...
You know what's bad? Sorry, just to interrupt. We spent more money on Wesley than we did on Coutinho and Kamara combined. That's grim, isn't it?
There we go. I'm going to do this. I'm going to Google who Wesley is playing for because
He's
I can't remember.
Internacional in Brazil, I think.
Internacional, yeah. And he's barely played with them this season. Well, he's played about 12 or 13 times, I can see here, but
one goal or something like that.
Wesley. Yeah, completely forgot all about him. It's really real shame because
in some ways,
he's Ben Mee has pretty much cost him a chance at a meaningful European football going forward, I think. And who knows? He could be a reclamation project, but I don't envisage him being around.
Yeah, me too. I know I shouldn't have asked those other questions. We've gone massively off topic. So obviously this was the deep dive into Boubacar Kamara joining Villa. So Neil, as a outing kind of message from you, I'll give you. Can you see the timer up in the top corner as we're recording this? So I'll give you I'll give you. I was going to say when it turns 50, but that's too far away for me to fill in. I'm going to give you 60 seconds to sum up the signing of Kamara. So take it away now.
Yeah. Okay. So I think if we're looking at Boubacar Kamara, is really, really exciting. 22 years of age, all the potential in the world. In the French squad for the first time. So he's had a couple of good weeks. From a personal point of view, I have likened him to the type of player that they can move between the lines of a 6 and an 8, like a Declan Rice does. He's very, very good passer of the ball. His passing statistics are up in the top 4, 5, 6% of all midfielders within Europe. And he's a massive sample set of about 74 passes per game. So it's not somebody who's got a small sample set of passing. He's a high workload type of player from the point of view as you can pass the ball an awful lot to him and expect good results from it, which is something that we don't have at the moment. He's not guts and glory he's not going to put 2 feet in and knock a fellow up in the air. He's going to be more calculated in his defensive contributions. Coming from being a centre half, I think that's where that comes from, because he's going to be more measured. He's not going to want to give away cheap fouls, and he's more of a midfielder that's going to want to slow opposition down, press higher up on the edge of the mid third, as opposed to regressing towards the box and trying to file back just to protect that D in front, which is something that we do an awful lot. I think he's going to engage a small bit further up, but he's an assured defender. But he's the real benefits that you do see from him, specifically since Sampaoli took over for Marseille, is that he can progress the ball forward. He's very good at it. He's confident and he's comfortable in it, and it's just a benefit that he has time playing back at centre half as well, that he knows how to defend too. So really interesting signing. The football world has stood up and kind of wiped their brow at this one and said, "Ooh, this isn't something we expected," which is great. And coming hot in the heels of the Coutinho transfer, this is fantastic PR for the club. Let's hope that PR for the club is now becomes great PR on the field, and we've got an absolute monster of a midfielder here that's going to come in and take the Premier League by storm.
Well, that was the 120 seconds, 60 seconds there, but thank you very much for that.
Brevity isn't my strong point then.
No, I love the detail. That's what I wanted you on for, and that's why we'll bring back AVFC Extra in dribs and drabs over the off season, rather than me and Matt kind of sit here and go, I don't know we haven't seen this guy play. Let's get someone on who knows what they're talking about and deep dive into a subject. So Neil, thank you very much for joining us on Claret and Blue this afternoon. Do appreciate your time.
No problem. Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks to the Facebook Live viewers who watched along and prompted some questions along the way as well. We do appreciate that. And for anyone who's watching on YouTube, do subscribe, like the video, those kind of things. If you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, then do leave a review on those platforms. As I said, we'll be back for our end of season review on Wednesday or Thursday. Me, Matt, Pat and Ash are all meeting up for a beer and to have a chat over the season that's just gone by. One thing I do need to plug as well from the higher ups, it's the 1982 anniversary on Thursday. 40 years bang on, and we've got a 1982 souvenir special. Neil, are you about to pull that out as if by magic? Oh, look at that. Lovely little plug. Great. I've got it behind me here on the shelf. It's a lovely read. Have you enjoyed it, Neil? Some of the stuff in there?
I did. I enjoyed it, and to be honest, I got it just before the Super Villains BT documentary, which is you can watch again on Wednesday, came out, and it was great to have the marriage of the two. Really, you kind of felt like you were almost part of of, you were a fan in 1982. I wasn't born in 1982, but I felt like I was able to relate to absolutely everything that was going on when I watched the documentary afterwards. So yeah, great read. Thanks very much for it, guys. It's, as I say, and to be able to get it over here in Ireland when we can't just hop down to the shop or whatever has been fantastic to see.
Yeah, and you too can get it online on the online shop. I'll put a link in the comments box below. I'm going to play a little short video to promo that as well, for courtesy of Matt Kendrick.
40 years ago, blimey. To mark the milestone anniversary of Aston Villa's glorious European Cup triumph, we've produced a brilliant souvenir supplement featuring exclusive interviews with the legends of 1982, fan accounts, photographs and the original match reports. It's a must-have memento for Villa fans. The 64-page supplement is available in newsagents in and around the Birmingham area, where you can order it for delivery via our online shop. It costs £2.50 and there's also a postage fee if you order online. Up the Villa!
There you go. There's a little promo from Matt. Like I said, I will put that link down below and you can go and purchase that. Thank you for watching this episode of AVFC EXTRA, our deep dive into Boubacar Kamara. Thanks to Neil again. My phone has dropped on the floor, so I'm going to call it a day there. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again later in the week. Thank you for listening to AVFC Extra, an additional dose of Aston Villa content for you, brought to you by the Claret and Blue podcast team. If you enjoyed the episode, please do get in touch with us, get involved in the comment sections, tweet us at Claret Blue Pod, or leave us a review on iTunes. We really do appreciate it. We'll catch you again very soon with some more content. Until then, up the Villa.